This is Yusuf and my channel, and this is a response to Zoroaster with an X. I think I had come in contact with you before. I think you actually left comments either on this channel or the channel that I had before, known as John the Hut Dweller, which the other people bailed on me, so I screw it, because I'm not going to have them people attacking a saint of the Orthodox Church, because it was supposed to be two other people, so one name, three, see the kind of thing. Alright. No, it's been a while since I've read the Church Fathers. I did reread Against Heresies. Last year, maybe. Early this year. No, last year. But Irenaeus, confusing thing to me, where do you get, he's the redactor, he put things into, first of all, the reason I said Papias calls, ascribes to the name John Mark to the gospel that we know as Mark, is because I've never heard marcion ever referred to as marcion. Never. I thought you were going with the whole, who is that? Was that Robert Price that tried to say that Mark was Paul, or Mark, and then there was another guy, Mark was Paul, but he was also Herod Agrippa, and I don't know if you're a fan of Acharia S. or Jordan Maxwell, or this is all strange. Where are these manuscripts where there's no redaction, or where these things don't appear? I've ran into one other person that says anything that's quoted by the Church Fathers was put into the Gospels. Irenaeus was some dude living in the south of France, of modern-day France, Gaul back then. It was Irenaeus of Lyon. He wasn't in Alexandria. He wasn't in Palestine. He's after the Bar Kokhba revolt, so you could say, well, they got pushed out. But he wasn't it's not the See of Antioch or Alexandria or Rome, which were the three C's. I realize there's five, but Constantinople was added at around the time in Nicaea, and so was Jerusalem reestablished. So you have nobody calling BS on Irenaeus. He mentions that there's the four Gospels. Yeah. And like you say, he's not the only one that says, well, in Adverse Heresies, he's not talking about Marcionism. He's talking about the Gnostics. I've heard that he was a secret Valentinian, an embittered Valentinian, because he goes into all the demiurges and archons and Sophia and these emanations away from God, away from the true God, and yeah, Docetism was a problem in the early church, and Marcion, when he read the New Testament, he said, "This is great." Took a look at the Old Testament, and said, "This isn't the same God. This is disgusting." And he took the line of the material is is bad or lesser or created by the lesser God, either ignorant or evil, and that we're basically entombed in our bodies. The soul is entombed in the body, and that Christ could not have taken flesh, and he only appeared. He appeared. You know. And yeah, you're right. Tertullian calls him the rat of Pontus. You know, gnawing at Scripture. Forget who says. I think he may even say shame on Marcion's razor, because he took the Gospel of Luke, cut out any Jewish references in it, birth story, most likely crucifixion, and just ascends into heaven. And he took a razor to the Pauline letters, cutting out anything Jewish or anything that he didn't like. When you don't actually have all the manuscripts that are written, because they weren't compiled until 360. Well, the first list we get is 367. There's codices always seem to have a very same consistency to them. Although you'll have the Shepherd of Hermes here, and you won't have 2nd Peter there, and you won't have 3rd John there, and you might get a different Apocalypse, or the Apocalypse is missing. In Eastern Orthodox Church, we don't use the Apocalypse of John. So nobody, are you are you basically saying then, so what, then there was no Ignatius of Antioch, there was no Pius, there's no Polycarp, there's no Epistle of Barnabas, there's none of this stuff. I don't know anybody who dates the Gospels later than the 1st century. Not even Bart Ehrman. I'm wondering if you know Koine Greek, by the way. Pastoral epistles, whether he wrote those or not, I can see him writing those later in life, thinking stuff that he wrote was too extreme. But you have to consider that the Gospels are written to different people for different purposes. You have Mark, and then you have Matthew and Luke. Matthew being written to the Jews, and why wouldn't somebody arguing against the heretic, use canonical texts that there was no canon back then, accepted texts that he basically. What did he add and take away? Where is there any manuscript evidence? Even in any of the oldest codices where they're missing these things, and it's all Marcionite, and Paul was a Marcionite, and Acts is a forgery. What was it? Said Paul traveled around for like 14 years or whatever. He was a Roman citizen. That's why he couldn't. That's why they weren't really prepared to kill him, because he was working for Rome. And then he became a Christian. So I don't know what to do with this guy. Send him over there. We don't know what to. Okay, send him. Finally, it went up to Rome. Whether he made it to Spain or not, or got killed. Tradition says he got killed. Funny thing, Spain says he made it to Spain. The Spanish say he made it to Spain, but yeah. So he didn't found church at Antioch, right? Peter never. Did Peter exist? Did Simon Peter didn't exist? Not saying that he wrote either of the letters attributed to him. But this is where I mean, I've ran into one person who says once Irenaeus quotes anything from the Gospels, that means it wasn't in the Gospels until after he said it, and then it was put in there. Which, that's the opposite of what historians do. When historians read things, they know, okay, this must have been there because this guy's citing it. Why would any of his stuff hold weight? Was he a bishop of any of the sees? Was he in Alexandria or Antioch? Was he in Rome? Because was Ignatius? I mean, some of the letters of Ignatius, yeah, they're not. They're just, I mean, I'm Antiochian, Syriac, Chalcedonian, so when the Western Roman Church started producing extra letters that we didn't know about, we were like, yeah, no, why don't we know about that, you know? Like the letter to the Virgin Mary. It's a great one. I actually had a Baptist suggest that to me, and I looked at it, I'm like, I didn't say, you honestly think that's real? But I was very tempted to. Marcion was rejected right off the bat. I mean, there was no council to say kick him out. It's like Valentinus or any of these other groups. I mean, the Ebionites were not part of it. People claim the original Matthew was an Ebionite gospel, and then it got tweaked. But where are these manuscripts or codices or anything where it says anything like this? We have accounts that Christians practice the Eucharist every Sunday. And were baptized the Eucharist, the body and blood of Christ. So, I mean, even a ghost doesn't have symbolic body and blood. It's just an apparition. Yeah, adverse heresy. I mean, you're some of the stuff that you're quoting, you're acting as if he's talking about Marcionism. He's talking against Gnosticism. And some of the spurious stuff that, well, one book he mentions being Marcionite persuasion is Gospel of Judas. We found that. So he's this great big liar, but nobody thinks to say you're lying, or they wouldn't preserve that. I mean, does he have a standing army behind him? I mean, I could understand if you said, you know, Justin Martyr, you know, or started, you know, or, I mean, not even him, because it was Alexandria and Antioch that were the main places. I mean, what about Anatolia? I mean, that Marcion was from northern Anatolia. What about any of the places, none of the places in ancient Greece? I mean, that Christianity didn't exist. Who was Nero persecuting? Or are those added into? It was all till the late 2nd century is when everything in the Bible was written, although I mean, even the most liberal actual scholars, I mean, aside from Jordan Maxwell and Acharya S. and people like that, place every bit of Paul in the early or mid 1st century, and they place the Gospels as late as the end of the 1st century. I don't think even any of them go past 90. Maybe they try to say John. I'm inclined to believe John was written early. John and Mark, I think, are the two earliest Gospels, and then it was Luke and then Matthew. But I'm just wondering, like, so that's the, I mean, you cut out a lot of people to get there, and a lot of writings. The Didache, that's nothing. This is pretty early, and he mentions that, I mean, we have fragments of what he has said. He said, yeah, Peter aided in the creation of the Gospel, Mark. There's people from anywhere in the early church saying Marcion wrote any of the Pauline letters. Now, there's a letter to the Laodiceans, which could have been manufactured by Marcion. So there was no. Paul was not a Pharisee. He wasn't. There's no references to anything in the Old Testament. He's not basing anything of the Old Testament. I mean, Romans is one of the undisputed letters. So is Galatians, Corinthians. I mean, I've written this before where people say anything that, you know, anything that I personally disagree with or don't think should be in there wasn't in there. I've read these guys, and yeah, I'm Rusty Tertullian. I read I don't know, a few years before I went to war with Iraq. When was that? 2000, 2001. And there's no saying like, oh yeah, and by the way, this got added, this got added, this got added. I mean, if I quote a Beatles song right now, and then about 2,000 years later, people say, "Oh, see, he quoted it, therefore it wasn't initially in there because we just have copies of copies of copies because you know the CDs don't last now that they're records, and they have to make all these copies." And it was somebody else. He added that in there, or he's the one that wrote that Beatles, because that Beatles song really, it sounds different, you know. I mean, that one album sounds different from the other one. They got a different. I mean, look at the early Beatles and look at, you know, Sgt. Pepper's and afterwards and all the stuff that supposedly Ringo Starr and John and George and, you know, and look at Wings. I mean, that's totally different from, you know, I Want to Hold Your Hand and stuff like that. So obviously there's like 5 different groups that didn't know each other and were competing against each other. And this myth of these, you know, 4 people from Liverpool, they didn't exist. I mean, stuff's so different, you know. I mean, I'm guessing you had to come up with this on your own, but there's no evidence. That's the problem. I mean, they theorize that the whole beginning of John was added, but you're just saying in the flesh. With John, it looks very. He's walking around. He's in a body. He gets crucified. Is that's Marcionite? And I don't mean this as an insult or anything, but it's kind of hard to take it seriously when you're calling it marcion. Marcion. You single out 2 church fathers, and then you say, "Oh, well, now we know that all this stuff is forgeries from the 2nd century." Do you find this in Sinaiticus or Vaticanus, or, well, one of them's the diatest, the blending of the four Gospels, so they did take things that overlapped out, but, I mean, what early codex do you find this, or this just seems, I mean, we found even before complete Gospels, or even just incomplete ones with parts of it have been worn away. We find scraps and stuff like that. I mean, we can go back pretty far with it, and this belief spread all over the Roman Empire. So why didn't anybody so there was no ancient Catholic Church. There's no ancient Catholic Christianity. It's all Marcionite. And then what did the Marcionites, the Valentinians, and the Ebionites have a meeting and say, look, we're all going to reject basically what we believe, and we're going to accept this totally new thing, and then we're going to go back and reforge a bunch of stuff. And again, who is Nero persecuting? You're probably a myth. Well, I guess you'd have to be a myth. I don't want to infer or assume too much. But are you a mythicist? Because Marcion, there's no physical Jesus. I can see how he misconstrued this reading Paul, because Paul talks about the carnal and the spiritual, you know, and he's using these terms. He also quotes the Epicureans. I mean, he's speaking to the Greeks. He's writing things in Koine Greek. It's called the Apostle to the Gentiles. He's using their basically thoughts, you know, their philosophy against them. But Marcion of Pontus, he gave a donation to the church found out what he believed, gave it back, said, yeah, go do your own thing. And all these martyrs that were holding on to these books, dying for this stuff, because you have the whole thing with the Donatists, and even before them, the group, I forget the name, something with an E, and then the Lapside, or the Tradores, or whatever they're called. None of this happens, right? This is all, it seems like if Irenaeus was BSing about any of the Gospels, Alexandria and Antioch would know about it, or is all of Christianity created at the end of the 2nd century? Because, yeah, Irenaeus 120, right? Some people say 120 or 150. Not Irenaeus. Sorry, not Irenaeus. Irenaeus was like just at the beginning of the 3rd, so like 2-something. 202 or some weird date like that. To get it confused. I don't this is just from me reading the Church Fathers for years and stuff like that. And actually arguing against Gnosticism and Marcionitism and Apollinarianism and Arianism and Sabellianism. Did Sabellius exist? Was Sabellius Marcion? I mean, he's arguing against the Valentinians, so the Valentinians didn't like Paul. It seems like they would got their same misconstrued ideas from Paul. I mean, they're misinterpreting Paul, but okay. Do you go to what about the Scythians? Was that a Marcion belief too, that the serpent was actually the... So everyone after Irenaeus only got their information from Irenaeus, right? And anybody who was before him couldn't have existed, or their words didn't mean anything. More importantly, I want to know what the manuscripts of the Bible that are missing these things. This would be interesting to see. Or that the church, where they're actively, they're being killed for their beliefs. Nero blames the Christians, and you have persecutions going on. Sometimes it's more lax, sometimes it's not. I guess you could say by Diocletian they were fooled. But southern France, compared to Antioch and Alexandria, Rome, all along Greece, actually, he speaks figuratively in one sense, yeah, because he was pretty much a free guy for a while until he got in trouble, and then he got bounced around and was staying in people's houses and this and that. And he wasn't really in prison until the pastoral epistles come around, which is later in life, admittedly. This is very odd. I don't know, maybe you want to talk on Skype about it or something. This seems ass backwards in every respect, but I'm sincerely interested in hearing how you get here. I mean, I remember watching some of your videos a while back. Didn't seem to make much sense. I think if you were the one talking about Revelations. But I'd rather just talk to you directly. This just seems beyond. I mean, because you're inferring into you're projecting into the scripture, or not the scripture, the writings, and pulling out of them things that other scholars see totally opposite. I mean, Bart Ehrman's like a fool, right? He got it wrong. All these other Bible scholars get it wrong, right? Eastern Orthodox Church really got it wrong, even though, you know, I don't know, this just seems wacky. But I would love to talk to you, Zora, and you have the name Zoroaster too. I'm wondering, are you a Manichaean? Because the Manichaeans were supposedly popped up in the 2nd century era, and I don't know. This is odd. Alright, take it easy. May God save Serbia and Syria. Please pray for the Christians of Palestine and Egypt. Take it easy. He wasn't in Alexandria. He wasn't in Palestine. He's after the Bar Kokhba revolt, so you could say, well, they got pushed out. But he wasn't an it's not the See of Antioch or Alexandria or Rome, which were the 3 C's. I realize there's 5, but Constantinople was added at around the time in Nicaea, and so was Jerusalem reestablished. So you have nobody calling BS on Irenaeus. He mentions that where do you get? He's the redactor. He put things into. First of all, the reason I said Papias calls ascribes to the name John Mark to the Gospel that we know as Mark is because I've never heard marcion ever referred to as marcion. Never. I thought you were going with the whole, who is that? Was that Robert Price that tried to say that Mark was Paul, or Mark, and then there was another guy, Mark was Paul, but he was also Herod Agrippa, and I don't know if you're a fan of Irenaeus or Jordan Maxwell, or this is all strange. Where are these manuscripts where there's no redaction, or where these things don't appear? I've ran into one other person that says anything that's quoted by the Church Fathers was put into the Gospels. Irenaeus was some dude living in the south of France, of modern-day France, Gaul back then. It was Irenaeus of Lyon, see the kind of thing. Alright. No, it's been a while since I've read the Church Fathers. I did reread Against Heresies. Last year, maybe. Early this year. No, last year. But Irenaeus, confusing thing to me. This is Yusuf and my channel, and this is a response to Zoroaster with an X. I think I had come in contact with you before. I think you actually left comments either on this channel or the channel that I had before, known as John the Hut Dweller, which the other people bailed on me, so I screw it, you know, because I'm not going to have them people being attacking a saint of the Orthodox Church, because it was supposed to be two other people, so one name, three